In this modern world, power isn't just inherited, it's taken. Princess Valerius stood on the command deck of the royal training grounds. She didn't wear gowns or tiaras. She wore a black tactical military uniform, her medals catching the sun. She watched her soldiers march with the eyes of a hawk. She was the Prince of War. To her, love was a weakness found only in movies. When she was bored, she had a rotating door of mistresses, models and socialites who knew the rules. One night of pleasure, no phone calls in the morning. Valerius was rich. Her kingdom was an empire of steel, and she feared no one. But even empires need allies. South of the border, the kingdom of Solara was drowning. Their gold was gone. Their people were hungry. Princess Ilara, the jewel of the south, was their only hope. She was a vision of feminine perfection, soft skin, long flowing hair, and eyes that held the romantic dreams of a girl who believed in soulmates. Her father, King Silas, was desperate. He proposed a union. If Valerius married Ilara, the empires would merge. Valerius would get the strategic ports she needed for war, and Ilara's father would get the billions he needed to survive. It wasn't a wedding. It was a business deal. The wedding was a nightmare of flashing cameras and fake smiles. Valerius arrived in her full-dress uniform, looking more like a conqueror than a bride. She barely looked at Ilara. When the priest asked for the vows, Valerius didn't speak of love. She spoke of duty. Ilara's heart broke. She had heard the rumors that Valerius was a brute who didn't care for human feelings. Now, standing next to this ice-cold woman, she knew the rumors were true. They were married by noon. By sunset, they were enemies. The move to the northern palace was a disaster. Ilara tried to make their new home beautiful. She bought flowers, she arranged the furniture, but Valerius ignored it all. "This is a palace, not a dollhouse," Valerius snapped during their first dinner. "Stay on your side of the wing, princess. I have work to do." The drama began before the candles even burned out. Valerius didn't spend the night in Ilara's bed. She spent it in her private gym, or worse, leaving in a blacked-out SUV to meet her friends in the city. 3 days after the wedding, Ilara decided to confront her wife. She walked down the long marble hallway to Valerius's private chambers. She wanted to demand respect. But as she reached the door, she froze. The sound of a woman's high-pitched moaning echoed through the wood. Ilara pushed the door open. There was Valerius, still in her work shirt, her tie loosened, pinning a blonde mistress against the desk. The room smelled of expensive whiskey and betrayal. The mistress gasped and ran out, but Valerius didn't even look embarrassed. She just poured a drink. "You're late, Ilara," Valerius said, her voice a low growl. "I told you I don't do love. If you're looking for a wife to hold your hand, you married the wrong woman." Ilara was furious. She grabbed a crystal vase and threw it at Valerius's head. Valerius caught it with one hand without even looking up. "You're a pig!" Ilara screamed. "My father sold me to a monster." Valerius stood up, her tall, masculine frame towering over Ilara. She stepped into Ilara's space, the smell of her mistress still on her skin. "I'm the monster that keeps your father from falling," Valerius hissed. "Now get out. I have war to plan." Ilara stormed out, vowing to make Valerius's life a living hell. The war wasn't in the trenches anymore. It was in the palace. The Prince of War had no idea. She had just started a fight she couldn't win, and the real drama was just getting started. Ilara didn't just walk out, she slammed the heavy oak doors so hard the palace portraits shook. She retreated to her own wing, her chest heaving. The image of Valerius with that woman burned in her mind. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the total lack of respect. Ilara was a princess of Solara, a woman men had fought duels over, and here she was, being treated like an unwanted piece of furniture in a cold, gray fortress. In the other room, Valerius didn't go back to her drink. She stood by the desk, her jaw clenched. She knew she was being a brute, but she didn't know how to be anything else. To Valerius, emotions were like loose bolts in a machine. They made things break. She had been trained since she was 5 to lead armies, to calculate losses, and to win. Looking at Ilara, so soft, so full of hope and love, made Valerius feel a strange, irritating heat in her chest. She hated it. She preferred the cold. The next morning at breakfast was a silent war. The dining table was 30 feet long. Valerius sat at one end, reading military reports on a tablet, dressed in a crisp, dark navy suit that made her shoulders look a mile wide. Ilara sat at the other end, wearing a stunning, bright silk dress, stabbing her fruit salad as if she were heart-piercing an enemy. The only sound was the clinking of silverware. Finally, Ilara couldn't take it. "Is she coming back today?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "The blonde? Or do you have a schedule for your mistresses? I'd like to know when to avoid the smell of cheap perfume in the hallway." Valerius didn't look up from her tablet. "She's a distraction, Ilara, something you wouldn't understand." "A distraction?" Ilara laughed bitterly, standing up and walking down the length of the table. "We are married. Even if it's a contract, there is such a thing as dignity. Or does the Princess of War lack the basic manners of a stable boy?" Valerius stood up so fast her chair screeched against the marble. She closed the gap between them in 3 long strides, pinning Ilara against the edge of the long table. The power dynamic was clear, the tall, fierce warrior looming over the delicate beauty. "Listen to me, little princess," Valerius hissed, her face inches from Ilara's. "You are here because your kingdom is bankrupt. I am here because I need your ports. That is the beginning and the end of our story." Ilara didn't flinch. She leaned in even closer, her nose brushing against Valerius's. "Then you're a fool, Valerius. You think you're so strong because you have guns and gold. You're a coward. You hide behind that uniform because you're terrified of actually feeling something for a woman who isn't a paid distraction." For a second, the air between them turned electric. The hatred was so thick it felt like fire. Valerius's eyes dropped to Ilara's lips for a split second, a flicker of pure, raw hunger that she quickly masked with ice. She let go of Ilara's arms and stepped back, straightening her suit jacket. "Prepare yourself," Valerius said coldly. "Tonight is the royal gala. We have to show the world that this union is perfect. If you can stop throwing vases for 3 hours, try to look like a happy bride." Valerius walked out, leaving Ilara trembling with rage and a strange, unwanted spark of adrenaline. But as Valerius headed toward the garage, her head of security intercepted her. "General, we've intercepted a message from the Southern rebels," the officer whispered. "They don't want this marriage. They plan to strike tonight, during the gala." Valerius checked the clip in her concealed sidearm, her face returning to the mask of the warrior. "Let them come," she muttered. "I'm already in the middle of one war. What's one more?"